All right, I need you to be welcome to the Young Turks, okay? And I'm the one welcoming you, so mission accomplished. What's up, Kasparino?
I'm doing really well, actually.
All right, there you go. I like
Kasparino. I like Kasparola, as Eclectic Miscellanea came up with.
Oh, I like that. Okay.
Casper the Friendly Host.
That's me from a long time ago. That's me from a long time ago.
Lots of great nicknames.
Okay, I'm not saying anything.
We have the best nicknames. Anna has the best nicknames of anyone who's, believe me, the best.
Okay.
I'm feeling feisty.
I came up with one yesterday off air because of the lighting in her home studio. It looked like her hair was on fire. So Casper Everdeen.
Oh.
Think about it. Think about it. Okay, the girl on fire. So forward.
All right. Well, we begin with Joe Biden embarrassing us again and being complimentary to terrible people. So let's talk about it. President Joe Biden has officially signed the so-called Inflation Reduction Act into law. This is the legislation that, of course, included the massive handouts to fossil fuel companies and provided some funding to respond to the climate emergency. Everyone's been celebrating it because it's the most funding Congress has ever allocated to respond to climate change. But I do want to remind you that that's an incredibly low bar, since this country has been pretty abysmal in regard to responding to climate change appropriately. Now, what really stood out about this signing ceremony was Biden doing a kind gesture for the very person who derailed his entire agenda. Let's watch. So for those of you who might be listening to the audio version of the program, Biden gave the sign that he used to sign the Inflation Reduction Act to conservative Democratic Senator Joe Manchin, who made sure that there were all these little goodies in the bill for fossil fuel companies, while also simultaneously stripping the bill of most social spending programs that would actually materially benefit ordinary people's lives. He got a kind gesture in response to that, and he was asked about that kind gesture. Let's see what he had to say.
What's your response to President Biden giving you the pen that he signed the bill with?
It was a nice gesture, a very nice gesture.
I hate all these people. That's really the only takeaway here, and it's not just out of nowhere. It's because of what Manchin succeeded in, which is basically doing away with the possibility of paid family leave, doing away with the possibility of universal pre-K, doing away with assistance so parents can afford childcare, especially women who want to go back to work, took that away. Did away with the child tax credit, which Biden alleged to want to make permanent, did away with free community and public colleges. I mean, but it's a kind gesture. And look, I think Biden, Cenk, is doing exactly what he wants to do. He's thanking Manchin because Manchin did exactly what Biden wanted him to do.
100% right. So a bunch of things out of that short little video. First of all, that's a nice murderer's row of corporate Democrats.
100%.
The people that have been destroying this country for a long time and enabling the right wing to rise up as they have. So Clyburn's among the worst, Schumer is a total fraud, Manchin and Biden. And Anna's right, throughout their careers, Manchin and Biden have almost never disagreed. So this has all been kabuki theater from the get-go. So when we told you that Joe Biden was going to do almost none of his agenda, we got a wall of disbelief and hate from Washington, both in terms of the political figures, but also the media. Oh, how dare you, he's gonna be FDR 2.0. Now, fast forward to today, and he's done almost 5% of it, and he didn't do 95%. Actually, it's worse than we imagined. We thought he would pass voting rights, or at least half of voting rights. I thought that there was a fighter's chance if we fought super hard on $15 minimum wage, but nobody fought on that, and it turns out we didn't get that. So a lot of the bare minimum we didn't get at all. And so now when we turn around and say we were right, all of Washington has now moved to a new alternate reality. The alternate reality is Biden delivered. Biden delivered almost his entire agenda.
No.
Well, that's just a lie. It's totally unsupported by the facts. Look, Anna already gave you a lot of examples, things that were total and utter layups, like paid family leave, which is like 84% popularity in the country, including 74% of Republicans. I mean, layups. The only people who oppose it are donor class to Joe Biden, Joe Manchin, and the Republican Party. So now, but I'm gonna just pick one example out of the lot. Lowering drug prices, massively popular. The most popular thing in the bill, everybody wants to lower drug prices.
No, but they got that right, Cenk?
Yeah, and now in the entirety of the Washington media and every Democrat in Washington is lying through their teeth, telling you that they got some portion of that and you should be happy with what they got. No, that portion is 100% trick. It's lowering drug prices on 10 drugs out of thousands and thousands and thousands, 10 drugs. Wait. In the year 2026.
Yes, beginning in 2026.
Beginning in 2026.
Yeah.
You know what that is? That is saying we're gonna lock in not lowering drug prices until 2026, and then we're gonna lock in another 10 years where we only lower drug prices on 10 freaking drugs. It's a goddamn joke. It's meant to deceive you into thinking that they took action when they did the exact opposite. They locked in high drug prices for decades. That's the kind of game that Joe Biden plays all the time and corporate media covers for him. So I don't care about the people who are just as deluded as MAGA. Those are the Democratic establishment ass kissers.
Yep.
So those guys are in a completely different world, detached from reality, where Joe Biden delivered. Oh, you guys aren't happy. Oh, nothing's ever gonna make you happy. What do you mean we're gonna lower drug prices in 5 years on 10 drugs? Maybe, kind of. You guys are a joke. Go kiss his ass. Go kiss Manchin's ass. I don't care. There was crumbs that Biden passed, like in terms of solar energy and renewable energy in that bill. There's crumbs that were passed in a couple of different bills, but almost all of them were wrapped in a giant lard of corporate pork.
Yes.
You hand it over to the solar energy companies, but then you also have to hand it off to the fossil fuel energy companies. Lard, and a little kernel for you, and then you send the alternate reality zombies out there to go, it is historic, it is the best thing we could have ever gotten, Joe Biden did his agenda. And then you see that feeble man go, and offer that pen to Manchin, which was almost out of Planet of the Apes.
Listen, if Biden fought like hell for his own agenda, and we saw that fight and he just couldn't get Manchin to play ball, my commentary would be different in that I wouldn't be as critical toward Biden. But Biden handing Manchin the pen the way he did is just another example of how he refused to apply any pressure to Manchin or Sinema. Nothing but carrots, nothing but complimentary commentary during his press interviews and his public appearances. There was never any hardball by the president to ensure that more of his agenda actually came to pass. And that's the reason why I'm frustrated, because one can't help but think that Biden didn't really want these things. That Biden loved the fact that there were convenient excuses both baked into the system and also within the Democratic Party to essentially put a stop to what he purported to be in favor of. Because I've seen and I have read about previous presidents fighting for their agenda and succeeding despite all odds, including LBJ, getting a Civil Rights Act passed, even when members of his own party were against it. He did everything he could because he actually wanted to pass it. And guess what? He succeeded. We didn't see that fight from Biden. And look, I've talked about this a billion times because the only good thing that we've seen in this Inflation Reduction Act, which is honestly just the name by itself is laughable. This is not an Inflation Reduction Act.
It has nothing to do with it.
But nonetheless, okay, the part that even some progressives have been celebrating is the money that will be allocated to responding to climate change. Except there's a massive catch. We've talked about that catch, and it has to do with allowing for fossil fuel companies to rake in more money, to do more drilling. And here's the example. Here's the CEO of Valero, a fossil fuel company, okay? The legislation, whose scope and ambitions were dictated by fossil fuel industry ally Senator Joe Manchin, includes components, quote, that are helpful to our business. Rich Walsh of Valero said during the fossil fuel giant's earnings call on Thursday. This is an older quote. But yeah, so that's what he said in response to it. And the bill, if passed, and it did pass, it just got signed today, would tie wind and solar development to oil and gas lease sales. That language is expected to undermine the Biden administration's plans to expand renewable energy on federal lands and waters, as well as greatly complicate plans to draw down oil and gas production that contributes directly to climate change and the climate crisis. And I mean, the list goes on and on, okay? So the proposed legislation would block the Interior Department from issuing any wind and solar development rights of way unless it first holds oil and gas lease sales. Onshore, the department would have to offer 2 million acres of federal land for lease annually, or half of all the land nominated for leasing, and hold a lease sale within 120 days of issuing any renewables right of way. Come on, guys.
Yeah. Later, when they write an article a couple years from now saying, well, you know, it's weird, they couldn't do any of the solar energy and the renewable energy stuff in there because it turns out in the bill, you have to actually lease federal land for fossil fuels first. And they'll pretend like no one could have seen it coming.
No one could have seen it coming.
Like, and the Hal Sparks of the world and Democratic ass kissers will be like, nobody knew. Oh, that is an unexpected twist. So instead of getting 5%, we got 0%. And corporations, instead of getting 99%, got 112%. What an unexpected twist in Washington. So look, guys, I mentioned Planet of the Apes, and if you've seen it, or if you just watch normal documentaries, you see apes do this. They put out their hand like this to an alpha ape. And humans are in the ape family. And that was Biden, like literally, to Manchin. If someone took 95% of my agenda and flushed it down the toilet, I wouldn't be going to them. I would brush up against them at the signing ceremony if I allowed them there in the first place, okay? But instead, Biden is thrilled to get that 5% because he was never gonna fight for it. He never believed in it. I don't care what alternate reality you live in. There are facts about the legislation. There are facts about the policies. Biden never wanted any of it. And so he's thrilled with the corporate pork garbage that he has passed in his term, and that's just evidence of it. Finally, last word goes to one of our members. We love doing the show with you guys. Travel Nurse Dragon made a good point. Manchin might as well keep the pen since he was the only one to get the watered down bill.
That's right. No,
that is a fair point.
Excellent point.
It's Manchin's pen, it's Manchin's presidency, and you see the beta male handing it to him right in front of your eyes.
It's so sad. All right, let's talk a little bit about the Republicans now, because Rudy Giuliani is in a world of pain, and his Trump cronies might actually throw him under the bus. So
love it.
Let's discuss. I know, so much fun. Let's go.
Tell us what this means that Giuliani has now been named as a target of this investigation. What is he now facing?
He may be facing a midnight train to Georgia, to quote lyrics from Gladys Knight and the Pips. Look, he's jammed up here. Being named a target, your lawyer being told, hey, your client's a target, it's really bad. It means that the grand jury and the prosecutors are thinking, yeah, we're about to charge you. It's imminent.
You heard that correctly. Rudy Giuliani's attempts to assist Donald Trump in overturning the results of the 2020 presidential election is finally catching up with him, and he has been named the target of Georgia's investigation of their criminal probe into what Giuliani was doing in the lead up to January 6th, including pushing for this phony slate of electors that would essentially cast the vote for Trump as opposed to Biden, even though Biden had won the election. Now, Georgia DA Fani Willis has suggested her investigation might result in changes that include charges that include racketeering and conspiracy, effectively a coordinated effort to fraudulently overturn the election, and Giuliani could also be vulnerable to charges of making false statements in those hearings. So what we've learned in recent days is that there's been a petition, in fact, the petition last month seeking testimony from Giuliani and other aides to Donald Trump. And Willis cited Giuliani's hearings as being part of a multi-state coordinated plan by the Trump campaign to influence the results of the November 2020 election in Georgia and elsewhere. And so let's talk a little bit about what Willis has disclosed about the investigation and why Rudy Giuliani specifically is one of the individuals who's being investigated. Let's go to graphic 4 here. Willis has said in a petition that Giuliani worked with pro-Trump attorney Kenneth Chesebro to coordinate the fake electors. Beyond that, there's the possibility that Giuliani could be held liable for making false statements in those hearings. Across many hours, Giuliani offered a litany of bogus claims, including some which had already been debunked. And you might be wondering, oh, which ones? Well, we debunked them in real time on the show, but let me remind you, he claimed, for instance, that lots of underage voters, dead people, and felons had voted in Georgia, none of which is true. And he blamed voting machines for changing the results, which also isn't true, and has earned Giuliani problems in civil court. But I want to be clear, he's facing a criminal investigation here with this Georgia DA. And I want to remind you about what kind of options Giuliani has if he thinks that he's like Donald Trump and he can, skirt the consequences of what he engaged in. So let's go to this next video, which features counterintelligence expert Frank Figliuzzi.
His options are not good. If he claims attorney-client privilege, right, it's an admission that Trump told him to do this illegal stuff in Georgia. It's a no-win for him. And all the DA has to say is, well, okay, that's very interesting. First, your privilege doesn't extend to criminality, number one. Number two, we could stay away from what Trump said to you if you think that's privilege. Let's just investigate what you did all by yourself with Georgia officials in an attempt to unlawfully overturn the Georgia election. We're focused on you. So it's really a no-win situation. He's going to have to plead the fifth or incriminate himself.
And in researching this story, I spoke to numerous legal experts, and they seem to agree with one another that, in America, for most people, when you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. So we're about to see what kind of stupid prize Giuliani is gonna win for serving as a crony for someone like Donald Trump, who doesn't respect our democratic process or the outcome of our presidential elections.
I'm glad you asked the legal experts.
I did, yeah.
So that's reassuring that you do in fact win stupid prizes. Well, he's gonna win a couple prizes here. First of all, I actually wanna give a lot of credit to the prosecutor in Fulton County, because apparently they know how to do their job. It's, with anyone that's on the Democratic side, the left side, whatever, it's a super low bar. Like the Manhattan Attorney General, the bar was right at his tippy toes and he tripped over it. And he couldn't prosecute anyone, even though the case was handed to him. All of his prosecutors are like, why won't you prosecute the guy? And he's like, well, I don't know how to do it. And he just bungled it away like a loser. So in Fulton County, they're like, no, there's a thing called a law and everybody's accountable to it. If you come up with fake electors, and one of the emails literally said fake electors.
Right.
And you try to replace the real electors with them, that's in essence a coup. That is sedition, that is arguably treason. That is a very serious crime. They were actually trying to get away with it. They were so mad that Pence wouldn't participate, they nearly hung him. I mean, that's a real coup where there was an actual threat of murdering the vice president. So Fulton County is doing the bare minimum, but yes, we got somebody to do the bare minimum. And Giuliani is spread it out that he's involved left and right. There's people who've written books, and Navarro wrote a book about it, etc. I mean, they're just, because they think they're above the law. For my entire life, right-wing men have thought, I don't have to follow the goddamn law. The law is for me to put everybody under my goddamn thumb. I don't follow it. And so that's why Rudy and Navarro and Bannon and Trump all think, we're not gonna get prosecuted. Well, now it looks like they are gonna get prosecuted, at least Giuliani is. Now the second part that I love, They're gonna throw him under the bus.
They are gonna throw him under the bus.
Of course. You think Trump's gonna go, oh, you know what, Rudy? Let me be a stand-up guy. Why don't I, fess up to what I've actually done and that I asked you to do that and that you didn't do it on your own. If you think that, if you think Trump has even 1 ounce of morality in that stinking orange body, you're nuts. Check yourself into a mental health clinic. Of course he's gonna throw Giuliani and everyone else under the bus.
Exactly. Well, we have that part of the story after the break, so we'll tell you, how this is all starting. The process of putting Giuliani right under that bus. It's just a sight to see. So we've got that story and more coming right up. Come right back.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. News.
Let's get right to it.
You say that with the walls closing in around him, his next move is to find a scapegoat.
Yes.
Go
and
on.
I believe, I believe that that's
because you were a scapegoat.
Absolutely.
That's Trump's former personal attorney, Michael Cohen, making a case that Trump is looking for someone to throw under the bus, to make a scapegoat, to essentially avoid any blame for the fact that he himself took home top secret and classified documents from the White House and then refused to hand them over. And that's why he got raided. Now, who is he looking to blame? Why don't we hear from Michael Cohen and see what his theory is?
I believe the next scapegoat is going to be Rudy Giuliani. I believe that everybody likes a bargain, but Donald Trump really likes a bargain. And I believe that Rudy is like a BOGO, buy one, get one half off. They're going to throw him under the bus for Mar-A-Lago. And at the same time, they're going to throw him under the bus for Georgia, for the district attorney Fannie Willis's case in Georgia. They're just going to keep pointing the finger. It's Rudy. It's Rudy. Quite frankly, I had nothing to do with it. It's Rudy.
Yeah.
Just ask Rudy.
It's Rudy. It's Rudy. Just ask Rudy. Rudy Giuliani.
It is hard not to like the way Michael Cohen talks with that New York accent.
Yeah, I do. I appreciate the accent. However, in the first clip that we showed you, the cold open, he talks about how he was made the scapegoat and how now Rudy Giuliani will be the scapegoat. I just want to make clear that random people don't get chosen out of nowhere to be Trump's scapegoats. Trump's lackeys end up becoming his scapegoats. So I just want to mention that because I feel like there's this woe is me, I was such a victim mentality here, and you weren't a victim, homeboy. You know that, right? And neither is Rudy Giuliani. Now, what they're talking about here, because there's so many different investigations going on, there's the January 6th investigation, then there's the investigation into the classified documents that Trump took home. They're talking about the classified documents. And so Michael Cohen believes that Rudy Giuliani might be thrown under the bus in regard to that issue. I don't really know how. I think that there's another person that they've already begun throwing under the bus, and we'll get to that in just a moment. But Cenk, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so of course they need 1,000 excuses because the guy did something criminally stupid. Both criminal in how stupid it is and a stupid action that is literally criminal. The nuclear secrets is the last thing you take home, not the first thing you take home. There's no reason to take them home at all unless you want to sell them, period. The brain dead zombies, no, you memento. Oh no, he was working late after not being president anymore and still wanted to, no. There's only one reason you take them home, to steal them and to sell them, okay? And so there's a couple of people you could throw under the bus. One is the person who handed it to him, which is likely the chief of staff, which we're gonna get to in a second, okay? The other is that schmuck who's right next to you, who keeps getting his, kicked in the nads and going, oh yes, can I have another round? Like things melting off his face and doing cameos on the side. Hey, Rudy, you schmuck. Now you take the fall like Michael Cohen did, like everybody does, okay? And either he'll turn on Trump or it's possible he'll spend a lot of time in jail. But look, prosecutors have been awful right? In Manhattan, they're letting his chief financial officer, the guy who ran his books, they're basically letting him off the hook. He's gonna get a tiny little prison sentence. It doesn't look like he turned on Trump at all. The Manhattan Attorney General is the worst prosecutor in the country, should be recalled immediately for being a complete and utter loser.
Wait.
But here in Fulton County, they're doing a better job. So they better put Rudy in jail for trying to doing fake electors and just literally destroying our democracy.
So Alan Weisselberg is gonna get a prison sentence.
A tiny one.
But still, I mean, wow, a prison sentence.
No, it's nothing.
I didn't see that coming.
Most of it is time served. It's horse crap. The Manhattan Attorney General is the dumbest, worst prosecutor in the country by a lot. Okay, so
well,
anyway.
I mean, just calling him dumb and the worst, I don't think
you're right. It's not fair. It's not dumb.
Something
He's
else
probably
is going
corrupt.
on. There's something else going on, exactly, because it started
Nobody's
off,
that dumb. Nobody's that incompetent.
It started off as a criminal investigation, and then all of a sudden he stopped with the criminal investigation. Two of the prosecutors working on that case decided to quit because they're like, why are you stopping with this criminal investigation? There's enough evidence there, we should pursue it. And all of a sudden, now we're seeing articles, and it's not gonna happen, but he might reopen.
Oh,
he might reopen. No, why would he stop and then reopen later? That makes no sense. Anyway,
the guy's a total corrupt loser. Okay, anyway, so in terms of the documents here, do you know how easy it is to turn them over? They're like, oh, well, I mean, they could have just asked for them. They asked for them over and over and over and over again, the Mar-a-Lago documents. And then, okay, so why don't you just turn them over? It's really complicated. No, it's not. The FBI came in, took them. You could have just taken them and given them to the FBI. Why didn't you do it? Because you had them hidden, because you wanted to sell them. And now you're gonna throw Rudy under the bus for it.
Now look, we've talked about the timeline before, but I'm gonna go over it again because it's important to understand how all of these powerful men get so many chances, right? They broke the law, it's clear they broke the law. And in this case, the DOJ reaches out and is like, can you please just give us back the documents that we know you have, please? And so 2 months prior to the raid, there was a subpoena for those classified documents. And Trump's attorney responded with, we've already given you all the documents, we have nothing left. And then there's an FBI informant who's close to Trump apparently, who informed the FBI of the fact that no, there's still plenty of documents here, many of which are marked as classified. And so the raid ends up happening. Okay, and the raid doesn't just happen on its own. The FBI or any law enforcement can't just unilaterally decide without a warrant to go into anyone's home, much less the former president's home in Mar-a-Lago. So a federal judge signs off on that warrant because there is probable cause, meaning there's reason to believe that Donald Trump is breaking the law. And guess what? They do the raid and they take with them nearly 24 boxes of White House documents, many of which are marked as classified, many of which are so top secret that they can only be read in a government facility, in a safe, secure environment. So that is the timeline, okay? Trump had many opportunities to just comply and give back the documents that he illegally took home with him from the White House. Now, Giuliani is an interesting theory, right? Someone that Trump might throw under the bus when it comes to this particular investigation. But there's already some rumors about another individual who I think would actually play as a better scapegoat for Trump here, and that's a former chief of staff Mark Meadows. Okay, so this is a New York Times report, and this is what they found based on some sources close to Trump who gave them the inside info. According to two people with knowledge of the situation, Trump and his chief of staff, Mark Meadows, the man who oversaw presidential records in the chaotic closing days of the administration, failed to organize an effort to collect, box, and deliver materials to the National Archives. Instead, they often focused on settling political grievances and personal grudges, they said. And then in the weeks leading up to Trump's departure from the White House, officials discussed what to do about material that he had at various points taken up to the residence and that needed to be properly stored and returned. By then, the staff secretary, Derek Lyons, known for trying to keep systems in place, had left the administration. Meadows said he would address such issues, according to a senior administration official. So it has begun. This is how it starts. This is how they begin to throw Mark Meadows under the bus. And you know what? He deserves it. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes.
Yeah, hey, what are you idiots gonna realize? He's never gonna come rescue you. So why don't you just tell people what you know about how incredibly corrupt he is? No, you're gonna go to prison for him? All right, you do whatever you want. They're all a bunch of criminals. Anna's 100% right. You don't stumble into being Trump's fall guy. You're the fall guy because you were one of his captains and you helped him to commit all those criminal acts. And if you want to go to jail for it, hey, it's just like the mob. That's your goddamn business, I guess, if you're that stupid. I want to correct one quick thing I said. I think I said Attorney General. It's of course Manhattan District Attorney, and his name is Alvin Bragg, and he's the loser who refused to investigate and indict Donald Trump. You should know and shame the people who refuse to hold Trump accountable. And Alvin Bragg's at the top of that list.
And to be clear, that investigation, which was initially a criminal investigation, looked into financial fraud that Trump allegedly committed. So that is an entirely different investigation from the classified documents, from the January 6th investigation. I mean, Donald Trump, such an innocent guy. I mean, such a good, kind spirit who's never done anything wrong, and he just happened to stumble into multiple major investigations. Weird.
Yeah, look, I'll say one last thing. Rogan and his dumbass guest today were talking about, oh, is this a setup from the FBI? Oh, they're going after Trump again. You know why they keep going after Trump? And barely, they barely laid a glove on the guy, right? Why? They're doing nothing. They're the weakest people in the world, and they make them seem like, oh, they're going, oh, those Dark Brandon, all those guys are going after Trump again. Why? Because he keeps breaking law after law after law after law, because they never actually went after him the first time, or the second time, or the 18th time. They always pulled an Alvin Bragg and was like, oh, he's the president. The Republicans will yell at me. So hey, do you remember when Trump was prosecuted? Oh yeah, I don't either. Because they never indicted this son of a bitch. For all of his crimes, a half a dozen super clear crimes he has admitted on the record, never ever prosecuted. And then that's why he keeps breaking law after law. He's like, nuclear secrets, who wants some? Who wants some? And then they're like, oh, they're going after Trump again, as if he's the victim.
No, I just, look, if you don't know the details of an investigation and you don't know what Trump has been accused of, if you don't know what the timeline is with these classified documents where he was given so many chances to just return them, with no charges, no investigation.
So easy, just return them. Okay. They're boxes, just give it back.
If you don't know those details, then how about you just shut up, right? I don't sit here and talk about political issues or any other issue in the news that I haven't read up on and I don't know every little detail of.
Yeah,
I just don't get it. Like the need to like, oh, I read a few headlines here, and what do you think? Do you think this is an FBI setup? Obviously, you didn't read a damn thing.
Yeah, if you're speculating on whether it was an FBI setup, you're a total idiot, okay? Because there's actual evidence. If it was a setup, we see it all the time. And we talk about, hey, wait a minute, that doesn't add up. And we look at the actual evidence, the exhibits, etc. There's a warrant that a judge signed off on. And then lo and behold, they did find 11 documents in Donald Trump's goddamn basement. He admits that they found the documents. I can go on and on and on, but it's never gonna get through the thick heads of Republicans. You know why? Because they like criminals. They just like criminals that are on their side. Look at what Giuliani said. He said, if Trump gets elected, the first thing he'll do is raid every one of Biden's houses. He didn't say because Biden did anything illegal. He's saying, how dare you investigate us for breaking the law? We're right-wing men. We're above the law. We run this country. We're allowed to be criminals all we want. And the Republican voters cheer, standing ovation, break the law, because they feel like we own this place.
That's
We're
right.
not breaking the law. It's already ours. Everything. We're not stealing. We could just rape and pillage and steal and betray the country, but we're not, because we're enriching ourselves and we are the country. That's how they think. If no one ever holds them accountable, they're gonna think that till the end of time. So for God's sake, somebody arrest the sons of bitches already.
All right, we're gonna take a quick break. When we come back, Rudy Giuliani had a fascinating interview with Newsmax. We're gonna get into the details, including what he thinks about people in positions of power ever being investigated for their alleged criminality. We've got that and more coming right up.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna and Ryan and Left in Oz, who just became members. That's Ryan Pearson. So both of you, thank you. They hit the join button below on YouTube. That's a great way to help the show and help yourself get all of our programming. And of course, everybody can do it at tyt.com/join. Casper.
Let's get right to our next story.
I really just want to know how Donald Trump, since you spoke to him, feels.
Remarkable, remarkable. I mean, I represented this man through going through hell. And you know the worst times for him when they would go after Donald Jr., Eric, or Ivanka. And this time they're going after him. He really takes it. You know what he says? It's going to help me.
He
said, did you see the number of people? First reaction was, I said, Mr. President, I don't even want to talk to you about the case. We got plenty of time to do that. I said, you know it's I said, I feel so bad, and Maria feels so bad. She's pretty close to crying. He says, tell her not to feel bad. You see the number of people in front of Mar-A-Lago already? This is going to turn around.
You heard it straight from Rudy Giuliani's mouth, folks. Apparently, Donald Trump is doing real well. And in the context of that Newsmax interview, he said some pretty insane things, including a theory about the deep state and assassination. We'll get to that in just a moment. But first, let's address what he said there. Unfortunately, Trump's right. The FBI raid has, in some ways, turned out well for him in that it has galvanized his supporters. He has done better in polls. In fact, he has widened his lead against Ron DeSantis to the tune of about 10 percentage points. So he actually did see a bump in support following news that the FBI had raided his home because he had allegedly taken home top secret and classified documents from the White House. And you're not supposed to do that. That breaks certain laws, including a law that he made far more harsh and robust back in 2018. Now, Cenk, I mean, what are we gonna do about that? His supporters are gonna support him no matter what. They see any type of investigation into his alleged criminality as nothing more than a witch hunt. They've been primed and conditioned to think that. So unfortunately, that's the unintended consequence of this.
No, I don't mind that at all. Look, so first of all, you should never, and most especially a prosecutor, they're supposed to follow the law. You should never prosecute Donald Trump if he didn't do anything wrong. Obviously, right? And if he did do something wrong, you should hold him accountable. That's supposed to be equally obvious, but for a lot of the prosecutors, it isn't because they're deathly afraid of right-wing reaction, right? And so they're like, oh, how's right-wing gonna react? Is he gonna become more popular? Are they gonna be super angry? Who cares? Oh, you did a bank robbery, but how are your fans going to react when we arrest you for the bank robbery? Who cares how my fans are gonna react? Did you do the bank robbery or didn't you do the bank robbery? So now, right-wing is totally untethered from reality, so you can't reason with them. So if you say to them, hey, Trump might have broken the Espionage Act, might have shared our nuclear secrets with other countries. They're like, yes, oh, I love that guy. Oh, now I love him even more. Well, how are you gonna talk to a lunatic like that? You can't talk to them. So just let him go, just let him wander into the woods. Oh man, our leader's a criminal, we love it. We love criminals. I hate the rule of law, Blue Lives Matter. Hate the FBI, let's attack them. You can't just let the lunatics drift off into the woods and defeat them in battle.
And let's not forget what Donald Trump did during his administration in regard to Julian Assange and the attempts to extradite him to the United States over his reporting of classified documents, right? So the United States wants to extradite him. Don't think for a second that the Trump administration let that go. The Trump administration was vicious in trying to get Julian Assange here to the United States so they could prosecute him to the fullest extent. Trump believes in rules and laws for thee, not for me, thinks he's above the law. Now, there's more from this Giuliani interview that I want to get to, because if you thought that was an interesting component of what he had to say, he has some insanity baked in. Let's listen.
Third world countries and banana republics, they arrest the former opponent,
all the time.
They kill him.
They kill him, they arrest them, they put their families in jail.
Donald Trump should be in any fear of the deepest of the deep
Yeah, he
state,
should.
maybe killing him?
I do.
Oh,
But only the deepest of the deep state, not the deep state, the deepest of the deep state. I mean, there's no evidence of that, and there's no reason to believe it, and there's political violence in the country already as a result of that kind of inflammatory rhetoric. But nonetheless, have at it, please. Go ahead and float that idea. Why not?
I have a great idea. I just came up with it. Let's build the world's largest mental health clinic and call it the deep state, and have them all bum rush it. Okay, and they can go into the deepest of the deep of the deep state. Okay, look. Do you think they're gonna kill Trump? Yeah, I think maybe they will. Like we would whack him, right? I mean, we break laws all the time. We're right wingers. We love being criminals, right? So I bet they're gonna do just like us, right? Are they gonna whack him, Rudy? Is that what they're gonna do?
I mean, look.
What I see is a bunch of pathetic minions. You know the popular movie Minions? That's all of Trump's guys. Pathetic little minions running around. What criminal activity can we support now? So sad, so pathetic.
Look, to be fair to Giuliani, maybe he's done something that I didn't think he would ever do, which is read up about the country's history and some of the more nefarious, top secret behaviors that the FBI engaged in, which in some cases did lead to assassinations of, civil rights leaders and things like that.
What do you mean? Rudy did it. He loved that stuff. They're like, when we were assassinating people, not only outside the country, but potentially inside the country in the 1960s, Rudy loved that kind of stuff. And why do I say that? Well, when he was mayor of New York, he authorized going in to surveil innocent Muslims with no evidence at all. He's like, oh, they're Muslims? Let's stamp them down and press down on them and investigate them all. You were part of the scumbags who did that. So now all of a sudden, when it's done to you, wait a minute. We are Christian white men. We rule this country. You can't investigate us. We can illegally investigate you. I'm gonna go back to that quote. He said, if Trump gets elected, the first thing he'll do is raid every one of Biden's houses. That's what Rudy said. In other words, we don't care what's legal and not legal. We know Trump broke the law, but you're not allowed to hold him accountable. And if you dare hold him accountable, we're gonna raid Biden's homes based on nothing. I just told you. We don't have any evidence that he did anything wrong. We're gonna raid his homes for political reasons. Because Republicans at this point, if they're still a Republican, they're thugs and criminals.
And I think what we're about to show you can really help crystallize what the GOP really thinks about law and order in this country. What they really think about essentially being tough on crime when it comes to disadvantaged people, when it comes to their political opponents. But when it comes to one of their own, they see these government agencies as their personal assistants, as individuals who provide cover for them, as individuals who do their bidding for them, which is why they're so outraged that the FBI would have the audacity to raid Trump's residence even after Trump was subpoenaed 2 months prior to the raid. Even after that subpoena told him he needed to turn over those documents to avoid a raid from happening. But he didn't care, he didn't want to follow the law because Trump thinks he's above the law. Now I think this next video is telling, to say the least. Let's take a look.
I think you'd have to really be a true partisan to see that they haven't gone too far. Just the mere fact that 250 years of history, just about, never done before. And there's a reason for it. It's not just like because that's what happens in banana republics. That's what happened in Nazi countries. That's what happened in communist countries. So the guy wins, and then he either kills or prosecutes the opposition.
You should lock her up, I'll tell you. Lock up the Bidens. Lock up Hillary. Lock them up, yeah, lock them up. I'll tell you something, though, and it's very, lock them up. You should lock them up. Lock up the Bidens. Lock up Hillary. Adam Schiff, Jerry Nadler, they have to be accountable.
Governor Asa Hutchinson of Arkansas told us last night he didn't think that was appropriate, the lock her up chanting, and he didn't think it was right.
I do feel she violated the law, and I do feel she should have been prosecuted.
Fascinating. Banana Republic stuff, I believe.
Yeah, so look, the reason why I'm so tough on the Republicans, first of all, everybody does kid gloves with them, like, oh, the Republican voters, they're so precious, is because, look, guys, they figured out that sometimes the media is corrupt and doesn't tell the truth. Congrats, okay. Yes, we figured that out 20 years ago. And so whenever there's a scandal, especially of an outsider, you should be really careful and look at what the media is actually saying. Because half the times it's innuendo, it's smears, etc. And we've done that for 20 years, and whether it's Democrats or Republicans. And sometimes with Republicans, we'll say, hey, that one doesn't add up at all, okay? And we'll sometimes defend the worst of the Republicans because they didn't do it. Okay, and sometimes the Democrat did do it, and we'll tell you, oh my God, he did it, get him the hell out of here, right? Because we believe in looking at evidence. But the right wing just doesn't believe in that. They love authoritarian government. They just love it. They just want a leader and they don't want to question it. If they question their leader, they're gonna get lost and they're gonna be fearful. So they say, if you break the law, we don't mind. They're never gonna look at evidence. They're never gonna analyze this evidence, no matter how guilty he is. They could have his fingerprints, and they might, by the way, on the documents. They could have Russian and Saudi fingerprints on the documents. And Republicans will say, oh, you're supposed to sell nuclear secrets to the Saudis. And the FBI did it, and Antifa did it. They're gone, they're gone, they're gone. You wanna support criminals? The Republican Party has become, the entire party has become a party of total criminals. So enjoy it. And he's a fascist, it's super obvious. And you wanna support a fascist instead of democracy? Have at it, Hoss. But don't come around telling us you love America.
Exactly.
Because you hate America.
100%.
You hate the rule of law and you hate justice and equality. Just own it.
Well, it seems like some of Trump's closest allies have already accepted that he's very likely a felon. And one of those individuals is Sean Hannity, so let's discuss. Fox News' Sean Hannity apparently acknowledged on his radio program that, yeah, maybe Trump is a felon, but even if he is, don't worry, he could still be our dear, dear leader. So in other words, here's Sean Hannity wanting a felon to be the leader of this country. Let's watch.
If they think that they're gonna somehow make this about Donald Trump and prevent him from running for office, well, they obviously have not read something called the Constitution, because the Constitution is pretty clear on what qualifies one to be able to run for president. In other words, okay, even if Section 2071 in the Federal Penal Code has penalty provisions upon conviction that a defendant shall forfeit his office and be disqualified from holding any office under the United States. Okay, but we do have something called the Constitution and the qualifications for one to be president of the United States that is very clear and enumerated, and you can't alter it by any statutes, precisely because our framers in their wisdom didn't want the executive branch dominated by the legislature, as would happen if Congress could disqualify any incumbent or potential president simply by passing a law. And the Constitution's qualifications are simple. You got to be over 35 and a natural born citizen. Being a felon is not a disqualification.
Now, he's actually partly correct. Being a felon, very partly, right? So being a felon isn't necessarily a disqualification, but it really depends on what kind of felon you are. And so let's talk about that a little bit, because Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, according to PolitiFact, says that no person shall be a senator or representative in Congress or elector of president and vice president or hold any office, civil or military, who had previously taken an oath to support the Constitution and then, quote, engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. That section was added after the Civil War. Now, there is an issue here, though, because as PolitiFact notes and as other legal experts have weighed in, the likelihood of this portion of the Constitution being used against Donald Trump, even if he is found guilty, right? that disqualifying him is still going to be a tough sell. It's still unlikely. They tried to use this against Madison Cawthorn. It didn't work. So look, do I think that it'll actually prevent Trump from running for president in 2024? No, I don't think it's going to stop him. But I do find it interesting that Hannity seems to have accepted that Trump is a felon.
So I want to come back to the felon thing in a second. But first, on the legality of all of this, just because the Constitution says, hey, here are 2 minimum things you need, like including the age limit, right? It doesn't mean that you can't exclude him for anything else. It just means you can't run if you're 34. So you don't need a clause in the Constitution that says, hey, if the president is working for a foreign country and took a bribe from a foreign country, he's not allowed to run again, or any office holder. That could be a law, and then the question is the law unconstitutional or not, right? And there are many laws that say you cannot hold office if you do X, Y, or Z. None of them have ever been found unconstitutional. Now, is it possible that this incredibly corrupt conservative Supreme Court will go, even though there's no precedent on that and we've never ever held anyone else to this standard, we're gonna invent a Trump standard that a law is unconstitutional if it applies to Donald Trump, okay? Is that possible? It's possible, but they'd definitely be lying and cheating.
Yeah.
So yes, he can be disqualified by a law. It doesn't have to specifically state it in the Constitution.
Yes.
So I want to be clear on that. Now, to the second point that Anna's making, Hannity's saying, well, if he's a felon, you could still vote for him, so what, right? Now, wait, okay, it depends on what kind of felon, right? And did he do his time? Did he serve time for the crimes that he committed and paid back service to the people? No, Trump didn't do any of that, right? And was it hey, you know what, that's a felony, but that's trafficking, that's legal in California, illegal in Missouri. Okay, maybe you do a pardon or maybe you vote for that guy anyway. No, this would be a felony if it's true. Remember, he's granting that it's a felony. If he gets convicted for it, it would be a felony of mishandling top secret information of the United States that is our nuclear secrets. They're not gonna prosecute him for that if he just took him home and thought that they were just mementos. They're gonna prosecute him if he was trying to sell them, okay? That's the kind of monster Donald Trump is. And Hannity says, so what? So what that if he was gonna try to sell our nuclear secrets? Technically, he could still run. And you'd vote for that guy? You'd vote for a president who tried to sell our nuclear secrets last time to our enemies? Technically, you're a monster. You hate this country and you love fascism, and you've got a fascist leader and you can't wait to support him.
I just can't help but think about the days when Hannity and all his pals on Fox News spent time broadcasting their disdain for Obama's tan suit and the fact that he puts mustard on his hamburger. Like they couldn't help themselves. Like any little thing. By the way, there were plenty of things to be critical toward Obama on, substantive things like helping Wall Street, the big banks, being supportive of quantitative easing by the Federal Reserve, which pumped all this cheap money into banks and private equity firms. And what did they do with that money? Did they trickle down to all of us? No, they used that money to make investments for themselves. They did stock buybacks and they created all sorts of asset bubbles in the country that we're now seeing the ramifications of today. But nonetheless, I mean, it's just amazing to me because there wasn't anything Obama could do that would lead to positive commentary by these individuals. Yeah. And now, years and years later, you have Sean Hannity saying, so what if he's a felon? You could still vote for him.
Yeah, guys, it's a devastating point. Just think about it for a second. Always think shoe on the other foot, right? And that includes when it's your guys, okay? In this case, imagine if Sean Hannity had information, the FBI had just raided Barack Obama's house and they found nuclear secrets that he has no business holding, no business at all. What the hell is he doing with nuclear secrets after he's left office? Do you think Hannity would be like, no big deal, no big deal. Oh, maybe, and then his son-in-law got a $2 billion from Saudi Arabia. Coincidence, no big deal. No, Hunter, in that case, imagine it's Biden and Hunter Biden got a $2 billion payoff from Saudi Arabia. And Hannity would come out and go, oh, no big deal, guys. And so what if Obama or Biden are felons? They should be allowed to run again. Do you think Hannity would say that? Of course he wouldn't say that.
Of course not.
Of course not, because he's a goddamn liar. Okay, that's why. It's super obvious.
And let's not forget, while Hannity has just made it clear that he's supportive of a felon running for president, he's supportive of voting for a felon for president. In huge parts of this country, felons are not even allowed to cast a ballot. And Hannity, interestingly enough, seems to have scrubbed any of his commentary on that topic from the internet. I was searching all morning for it, but I did come across one tweet, doesn't have much commentary, but they did want to go after Michael Bloomberg after Florida had allowed inmates to vote after a ballot initiative passed in the state. And then what the lawmakers in Florida did in response to that, because they didn't like the outcome of that ballot initiative, is they said, you don't get to vote until you pay all of your legal fees, until you basically pay back any debt you have. Michael Bloomberg comes in and he's like, I'm gonna pay all of their fees and stuff so they can vote. And Fox News was furious about that, and Sean Hannity had tweeted about it. Report, Bloomberg Group paid fines for 30,000 felons so they can vote in Florida in 2020.
So back then, he thought felons shouldn't have any rights. They shouldn't even be allowed to vote. But now that his big guy's a felon, he's like, not only should felons be allowed to vote, they should be allowed to be president. Gee, I wonder if they're hypocrites over at Fox News. Hard to tell. Well, they report, you decide.
All right, we're gonna take a quick break. When we come back, we're gonna have some fun in the second hour today, because right-wing candidates have made a lot of missteps that are worth laughing at. So we've got that and more coming right up. Don't miss it.
Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur, and I'll see you soon.